Hello, welcome to the Live at 5. And today we are talking about moving from criticism to compassion in our lives. And the subtitle is Therapist Strategies for Reigning on the Inner Critic's Parade. The reason I talked about reigning is I'm going to talk a little bit about Tara Brach's RAIN acronym that can help us when we are really feeling down, when we're in what Tara Brach calls that trance of unworthiness, where we don't think we're any good, where we just want to go out and eat worms and we feel like giving up. So what are we going to be talking about? Tara Brach is a Buddhist teacher, and she has an acronym that she calls RAIN. And it's for when you're feeling particularly down, if something's upset you, or you just are in that place of self-blame and criticism. And particularly, it might be that your inner critic is really having a field day with you. And this week on my podcast, Good Enough Counsellors, I'm actually talking about the inner critic. So I thought it might be a nice idea to ask other counsellors what they do when their inner critic gets going. So I've had some lovely answers on my Facebook page. So do go along and have a look at that. It's at Good Enough Counsellors on Facebook, and that would take you to my Facebook page. And on there, therapists were sharing the ways that they actually deal with their inner critic. And if you want to find my podcast, it's quite easy. You can go along to that web address and click on that, and it'll open up all different places that you can listen to it. Or you can find it on my YouTube channel at Good Enough Counsellors on YouTube. Or simply go to something like Spotify or Amazon, and or Apple Podcasts, and you'll find the podcast there. So it is fairly easy to find. And as I say, this week I'm talking all about the inner critic, because as counsellors, we are not protected from the inner critic. And in fact, I'd say that that's part of what makes us counsellors, because we've maybe had things that have happened to us that have caused us to have quite a strongly developed inner critic. And that's brought us on our counselling journey and ultimately enabled us to be counsellors. So in some ways, the inner critic is our friend. And that's something of what we're going to move on in talking about RAIN. So what does RAIN actually stand for? So Tara teaches that there's 4 parts to really getting alongside yourself when you are suffering from inner criticism. And she says the first thing to do is to actually recognize what's going on. So if you start feeling upset, if you start having those thoughts about, oh, I might as well give up, or I'm no good at this, or you feel that sort of heat of shame, you're feeling guilty, when you're in that place, it's really good just to stop for a moment and to actually recognize it. And often what happens is we don't actually allow ourselves to recognize it, because it's sort of like facing a set of really hard feelings. So if you're me, what you'll do is you'll go off and find some chocolate and eat a whole load of chocolate rather than facing up to those feelings. I'm getting better at this, by the way, but that is something that I would do, is just go off and try and bury my feelings in chocolate, which actually just makes me feel worse. I mean, I enjoy chocolate, but using it like that, it's not particularly helpful. Other people will have other ways in which they deal with shoving down those uncomfortable feelings. It might be having a glass of wine, or it could be anything really. So if that's you, do give me a thumbs up if you recognize what I'm talking about with chocolate. But yeah, I mean, the first thing is actually just to stop and recognize the feelings that we've actually experiencing, and then just to allow them. And this is to acknowledge that the feelings are there, the thoughts are there, and to let them be. They're, hello, you're my old friend. And I'd just like to read some of the comments that I got on my Facebook page, and just shout out to some of the counsellors who actually, sort of answered the question. So, for example, we've got Sandra who says, be curious, listen and get to know it. And Julie Elliott says, I treat it with compassion. She treats her inner critic with compassion. It wants the best for me. I try to understand its root. And I think that's the thing about when we are feeling these feelings, it's easy to sort of almost see the inner critic as our enemy, to see the inner critic as something that we want to separate out from ourselves. But in actual fact, the inner critic is there for a reason. And as Julie says, to treat your inner critic with compassion, to welcome the critic in and to sit down and talk with the critic and try and understand where your critic is coming from. That can actually really make a difference. And Victoria Telfer Smith says, I reassure it knowing that it wants to protect me from shame. It wants to protect me from getting it wrong. I tell her it's okay, I've got this, and thank you for looking out for me. So this sort of brings us on to the third part of the RAIN acronym, which is investigate. It's trying to understand, why is this feeling going on for us? Where's it coming from? What is it about? And quite often it is actually rooted in those, say, early childhood parts of ourselves. And Sandra Stevens said, be curious, listen and get to know it. It's usually protecting a younger part. It's working really hard to keep me from feeling those difficult emotions. There are no bad parts, and the critical part is just stuck in a hard role. So, Sandra's saying, really needs our compassion, and that part of ourselves that's being very critical actually needs some compassion, because where is it coming from? It's probably coming from a place that was really hurt when we were younger, and actually, that place that was hurt needs us to look after it. And that brings me on to the last part of the RAIN acronym, which is nurture, because that's actually what really helps with your inner critic, is actually to nurture yourself. So it's asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? And it's possible that actually the thing you need is not actually chocolate. I do try and tell myself that it's chocolate that I need, but to be honest, it probably isn't. Quite often what I need is, I need to sit down with someone and I need some reassurance, and I need to talk to the people who love me. And that helps me a lot. Sometimes what I need is to go outside, to be in nature and to walk and to see the sea and to feel the wind on my face. And just that rhythm of walking really helps me. Other times I might need to meditate some more. I might need to journal. Quite often what helps me is listening to my music, because it always lifts my spirit. So really ask yourself, what do I need to be able to nurture that part of me that's being very critical of me? And keep coming back and keep nurturing that part of you. Recognize that that part of you needs a lot of love. And that will help you in those times when you feel like giving up, when you want to go outside and just eat worms. It really does support you to know where it is that that part of you is coming from, and to look after you. And obviously, I'd love you to listen to my podcast, because I go into a lot more detail about the inner critic and stuff that you can do to help yourself, and how it applies to you if you're working in private practice. That's coming out on Thursday. And the reason I've shared it is because I'd really love you to get the support that you need, so that you can go on giving people the support that they need. And that's why I'm here doing my job. So I hope that's helped you. Sending you lots of love, sending your inner critic lots of love too. And, do look after yourself, and do look after that part of you that needs so much nurturing and love. Bye for now.